how can somebody claim to have no conflicts when just last week he told the commissioner he has so many conflicts that he needs a full and robust plan to manage them all? Mark Carney refuses to disclose his assets and his conflicts of interest. He doesn't understand why the media and why the opposition keep asking questions. Now, every time he's asked about his connections to Brookfield Asset Management or his conflicts, he becomes defensive, he deflects, and then he attacks. Remember what he told all of you and all Canadians after the Liberals' English language leaders debate in Montreal. He said, quote, "I do not have a connection with Brookfield Asset Management," end quote. Now, I'm sure each and every one of you saw his exchange with reporters in London yesterday. Now, did that sound to you like someone who didn't have any connections to Brookfield? And recall what his office said last week, quote, "Despite repeated attempts, Carney's transition team have declined to clarify if the new Prime Minister still possesses any financial interests in Brookfield," end quote. So apparently, Mark Carney doesn't think that Canadians deserve to know before they vote, and apparently he thinks answering questions on this subject is beneath him. When he was asked about moving his Brookfield headquarters to America from Canada, he lied. When he's asked about his assets, he says he doesn't have any conflicts, and he attacks the motives of the ones who are asking the questions. We know from media reports that Mark Carney was very likely owed future bonus payments from the multi-billion-dollar Brookfield funds that he personally set up and that he managed. And these bonus payments are directly tied to the performance of investments that he made at Brookfield. So what else do we know about the specific Brookfield funds set up by Carney? Now, while Brookfield doesn't provide a full list of projects and companies they are invested in, we know they've invested billions into solar panels, wind turbines, infrastructure, heat pumps, alternative fuels, and countless other sectors associated with the so-called green transition. But also important is the question of which companies and industries did Brookfield and Carney bet against, wanting certain sectors to succeed over others.
Brookfield has invested in, shares in companies, specific ones that manufacture, distribute solar panels, and let's say those companies ended up getting the contracts for that from this fictitious project. Well, those investments are going to do pretty well if you're going to get something like a $20 billion project from the federal government. He's made the decision that would actually benefit himself from those investments performing exceedingly well. Carney could be really smart and say, okay, well, I'm not going to outright grant the companies that are in my portfolio contracts for wind turbines because that would be too obvious. What I am going to do is the companies that they're competing against, we're going to make sure that they don't get the contracts for the federal government, thereby lowering the share value and lowering the revenue of those other companies, making his companies indirectly more attractive to other investors.
Which countries did Brookfield and Carney bet on, and which did they bet against? Brookfield is not the most transparent company, but they are slightly more transparent than Carney is personally. And through their public filings, we have some hints. Mark Carney was appointed chair in the latter half of 2020 using the most recently available data. For 2021-2023, we can see that Brookfield's reported assets in the United States increased by 23%, and in Canada declined by 4%. That's right. Just as Carney moved his headquarters to America while he was chair, Brookfield was investing more in the United States and they were pulling back in Canada.
I was going to make the point that if you've already handed over the list of your assets to the ethics commissioner, as well as your plan to dispel any conflicts of interest, you already know what those things are. So why are you not telling it to Canadians publicly? Why are you waiting until that 120 days? And the only answer I can come up with is because that 120 days comes after Election Day.
How can somebody claim to have no conflicts when just last week he told the commissioner he has so many conflicts that he needs a full and robust plan to manage them all? And he lied. He lied about his role at Brookfield. And so not only can we not simply take him at his word, we now need to question what his motives are. And, you know, and if you look at what he said on Friday here in this building, when he said that they were going to eliminate the carbon tax, and then yesterday he says, that's what he says here in Canada, and then yesterday he's in Europe, and he says, we need to have a carbon tax in place in order to trade with other countries, which is simply not true. We've said that the rules absolutely need to change. We couldn't have imagined a scenario when Conservatives put in place this conflict of interest regime following what was then the most corrupt government that Canada had seen with the Chrétien-Martin Liberals. Well, we've now emerged from 9 years of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals, and we see a series of ethical law-breaking and scandals. Why is it that Mark Carney isn't simply willing to just be transparent with Canadians? He knows today what those conflicts are. He knows what is in that robust plan. Why not simply take the information that is going to be disclosed like it is for all public office? It's black and white. It's not a discretionary matter. Conflicts of interest that will present. Prime Minister of Canada, how is it that he's expected to lead discussions, to take decisions, to chair the cabinet in this country, and he's got to leave the room when anything on taxation, anything on transportation, anything on energy, on green technology is discussed in the room, because that's what's invested in these funds that he's going to be effectively taking a commission on, getting payments on. So why is it that we have to wait the 60 days to read it? Because what's going to happen in that time? There's going to be an election. And in the meantime, Mr. Carney continues to take decisions. He continues to set policy for this country, and even projecting into the future after the election. It's basic transparency. It's incumbent on a prime minister, and he should do that, especially when he's leading a party that includes a cabinet who have members who have been found guilty of breaking the very law that he claims to hold so important that he's going to appeal only and meet only the minimum standard.
If there's all of these things, then that begs the question from Canadians, like, okay, sounds like you're going to profit a lot from being the Prime Minister of Canada,